Hey everybody! Before I get started, I just wanted to say that this video contains heavy spoilers for the entirety of Life is Strange Double Exposure. So if you haven't played the game yet, or you're watching a playthrough or whatever, I would stray away from this video. It's going to get into at least quite a few spoilers. Hey everybody! Excuse my voice, I'm a little sick at the moment, and I know white t-shirt isn't normally my vibe. This is recorded on Halloween, so I was in a costume. I was dressed up as Mulder from the pilot in his more casual outfit, so that's why I'm just wearing a white t-shirt now, because my apartment is way too dang hot for me to be in a full button-down and jeans. So, but today's video is about my first impressions of Life is Strange Double Exposure. I got the game, downloaded it, and over the course of the past 2 days, I played it literally every second of free time I had. I think my playthrough ended up being about 12 hours. I took a photo like immediately after I did it. I'll put it up right here. And this video is basically just going to go through the episodes and be, my first impressions and my overall feeling about the game after my first playthrough. This is not a full review. I wholeheartedly believe that to properly review something, you have to sort of sit with it and digest it for a little bit. So either next week or the week after, I'm going to record like an actual full-on review. This is just my first impressions. So without further ado, let's get into it. So to start off, I had quite a few technical issues with this game. I'm playing it on PC, and my PC is by no means a slouch. It's a good machine, it does well. I'd say it's about on par with the current gen of consoles. But even I had a lot of issues with the visuals and certain graphics settings. For example, I had a weird glitch with the heads where it almost appeared as if the heads weren't fully in sync with the torsos. As certain characters would walk, it would kind of like glitch out a little bit. I got the standard T-posing bug when I would load in to continue a section. A character who I'm supposed to speak to, who's normally sitting down, would be, up like that. The other issue I had is that some of the fake depth of field that they were doing had some artifacting to it. Maybe there's something up with my rig, but I really don't believe it. I figured that this game that had its early access version out for a little bit would have worked out these graphical kinks sooner. So I was a little disappointed with that. But getting into the actual first episode, I loved the set piece of the bowling alley and the idea that Max likes to photograph this sort of abandoned places and finds depending on what your choice is, either its usefulness or things like that, uselessness. I really overall liked the interactions with Safi, and I think it lays the groundwork for her as a character fairly well. The fact that she's kind of living on the edge, breaking the rules, and is willing to sort of take advantage of others. And I don't mean blatantly like taking advantage of Max yet. I mean that her conveniently having her mom's card to spend on alcohol at the Turtles bar. That kind of thing where she's just okay with doing that, or okay with like these sort of mind games or looking through Max's wallet, things like that. While at first it's played off as a joke, as you learn about her, it does kind of play into the type of person she is. And I thought, now looking back, I feel like that's actually very well done groundwork that was laid. I think Moses is a good character as well. He really grew over the course of the story a lot more than I thought he would. With episode 1, I immediately thought when we had this meteor shower that was going to be the big astrological, like the big event. There's the storm, there's the fire. I thought that was going to be our big thing. So I was a little confused when it didn't happen, but I thought that was interesting. It was a cool set piece, a good way to get to know all of these characters together. I thought the way the conversations branched off was very well done overall, because there were a few things that I didn't do, or I refused to do, or I didn't snoop on this person, so I didn't say this, or for example, in episode 2, you can blatantly tell Gwen that that Safi's book got canceled. However, I didn't do that. I said, "Did you know anything about Safi's book?" And that came back later in a conversation in a very interesting way, because I didn't flat out confront her. So I thought that was very interesting, and maybe upon a replay, it won't be as, I won't feel the same way. Maybe the options weren't as in-depth as I thought they were. But overall, I did feel like there was a good sense of consequences and alterations for my actions. My initial feeling when I heard about the Abraxas Society was, oh great, we've got another Vortex Club. But they kind of, as time went on, they were sort of just like a high-class fraternity is the best way to describe them, honestly. And they felt like a much more realistic group than the Vortex Club. You hear things about them putting on charity events or helping with things around the school, as well as getting into sort of the delinquent stuff. So it felt like a much more realistic fraternity society at a school. Now, you guys know that I'm very much a Arcadia Bay over Chloe kind of person. I have nothing against Chloe, but I think the overall, thematically with the first game, it makes the most sense to sacrifice Arcadia Bay. And I was a little disappointed when I looked at Max's phone and the social media tab that there weren't any other returning characters from Arcadia Bay because I went that route. The only ones who were there were Victoria and Joyce, which Victoria seemed like an odd one because, you know, that was Max's high school bully. I don't know. And I feel like with the absence of posts from characters like Kate or Warren, it felt a little underwhelming. So I was a little disappointed in that aspect. However, overall, I think they did a good job handling the differences in dialogue depending on if you sacrificed Arcadia Bay or not. And also, I'll get this out of the way right now, the emotional lines hit so hard. My favorite one, and this is one that we got in that 10-minute teaser when they're up on the roof, Moses is basically saying, I didn't think you were the, it's not the destination, it's the journey type person. And she responds that sometimes you reach the destination alone and that's okay. That line really hit hard. And I think they did a great job of capturing Max's, Max has a certain nostalgia for her own life. Going back to the way things were and reminiscing. She has a memory box about Arcadia Bay, so I thought her overall characterization was very well done. I really liked some of the new characters. Early on, I was not a fan of Vin. I did not like him. I viewed him as more of a suspect than anything, but I think as time went on, I did enjoy him much more as a character and not so much a love interest. I do like his, I will say, full transparency, I'm a queer person, so I'm allowed to say this, but I saw that guy and I was like, holy crap, he is gay. That is a gay man. And then he started flirting with Max, and I was like, I guess he's not, or I guess he's bi. And then later on they have a conversation where he talks about being attracted to both genders. So that to me, I was like, okay, that makes a little more sense. But my first impression of him was like, why is Max flirting with this gay man? I will say I did feel that Amanda is another character who grew on me. I didn't dislike her as much at first, like out the gate. I thought she was, a cute, fun character. And I did feel like the writers really wanted you to have a romance with her because they present that option to you super, super quickly within the story. And I don't think she's a bad option. She just wasn't, the way I view Max, the way I've played as Max, didn't really fit in line. I do like the way they handled it later, which I'll get into once we get to episode 3, I believe. But overall, I liked her, and I think I liked them more as the story went on. So now I fully like them. But at first, I was like, I'm not really used to them. I felt that at first, some of the I felt at first that Life is Strange 1 had such memorable characters. Victoria Chase, Kate, all of those characters, Chloe, Warren. I thought they were all so memorable that some of these characters in the new one were kind of underwhelming. They didn't stick with me as much. But then I had to remember that, I have a certain nostalgia for the first game, just like we all have. And I think that definitely warped my opinion a little bit at first. I think I went in a little more judgmental than I would have liked to. But yeah, overall, episode 1 was pretty good. It was kind of all stuff I kind of knew because we had seen a lot of reveals and a lot of the trailer footages from this episode. So yeah, let's get into episode 2. So episode 2 is when we really get into Max's new power, which at first I felt was a little clunky. The idea of having certain anchor points that Max must go to in order to flip realities, it at first felt kind of clunky, especially in the Caledon courtyard, because I had to run across it one way, then I had to run back to go eavesdrop on a conversation, then I had to go back to talk to this alternate version of this character, and blah, 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 blah. It felt a little tedious. However, when they introduced different mechanics of it, like the fact that Max does blatantly disappear when she enters this next timeline, the placement of the portals makes a bit more sense. It's like hidden by the bathrooms at the bar, it's behind one of the statues, it's behind a building here. So it kind of fixed that little plot hole with the first game where people were like, does it just like appear to other people that Max just teleports right to them because you can, go into a different room, time travel, and then you're just there? I feel like that kind of fixed that issue a little bit. It added a lore reason that people aren't like, where the hell did Max go? Because they do address it with Moses being like, oh my god, where the hell did you go, in a later scene. I feel that Gwen is a very compelling character. I think she's very well acted. I think her character design as a whole, the tattoos, it all tells a story. And then her arc about, just the way that her story goes in both timelines, it's very compelling. And, she is a great character. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I believe she's one of the first trans characters to play a fairly big role in a Life is Strange game. And that to me I think that's a big deal, because there have been some criticisms in the past of the Life is Strange games for the main characters that they have. I know especially with the fact that in Life is Strange 2, Cassidy and Finn both have dreads, yet they are white, and so people were like, why didn't you just make them black? And so those kind of criticisms I think are important to take account of. While Life is Strange is a very progressive game, there's always ways that we can be better in trying to be more accepting and understanding of others. And so I think this character, Gwen, being so well done and being such a compelling character is another good step in the right direction. And I really think she's just, once again, a compelling character. I might sound like a broken record, but I really do like her as a character. This is the first episode where Safi's complexity kind of grows. And I talked about the groundwork being laid in that first episode, but I like how, we find out that she has been sleeping with Vin and that they've had some sort of very complicated relationship. And I like that it makes you start asking questions. And for me, at least, I really felt that from the beginning, I kind of didn't trust Safi. Just from the fact that Moses had an offhand comment saying, between all the secrets of you two, how do you even talk to each other? And that made me think, like, well, what's Safi's deep, dark past? Because Max is obviously kind of quiet about things because of everything she's been through, so it made me wonder about Safi. And then to find out that she was with Vin, and that, at this point, Vin is still actively flirting with Max, and there's clearly sexual tension there. And so for him to not really, clearly he doesn't want Max to know, Safi doesn't want Max to know. It just, it made me ask a lot of questions, and I'm very, it intrigued me. And I think once we get to episode 5, I'll kind of wrap it up about my thoughts and the overarching ideas, but I think they did a very good job of that, of sort of planting those seeds very subtly, because I wasn't fully suspicious of her until I needed to be, with the pacing of the story. Okay, so this one's funny. In episode 2, I wrote in my notes, I wonder if anybody has any other powers or if there are any doppelgangers around, because they talk about Max setting up plans in this alternate timeline while she's, over in the other one, because she spent like 3 days mourning, but then when she flops over, Safi's like, I was making plans with Max, where is she? So it made me wonder immediately, is there like another Max running around from a different timeline? What's going on there? And it made me ask a lot of questions, which is very ironic when we get to the end about one of the big reveals. And then also with Max, she feels much, this isn't a criticism, she felt a little more nosy than normal. Now maybe I need to go back and replay the first game again, but I feel like I'm an expert on that, considering, you know, the channel I've built around those games. But I felt like she was a lot more nosy, but then again, you know, with the time travel stuff, I feel like she's a little more manipulative in the first game, so I feel like it's very in line with her, but I was kind of like, dang, Max, you're, you know, we're really snooping around here in places we shouldn't be. So let's get into episode 3. So episode 3, Max finds, you know, this photo of herself holding the gun, and that's also what made me think, holy crap, are there doppelgangers? But here's the thing, she jumps into the photo and she's seeing it from the perspective of herself holding the gun. And Safi says a few quick lines about Maya and all this stuff, and there's a storm going on in the background. But there wasn't, you know, the night of Safi's murder. And I will say, my initial knee-jerk reaction of seeing, oh, there's another storm, I was not happy about it. I had a very knee-jerk reaction of like, are you kidding me? They're reusing the storm? That's so stupid. This opinion changed. By the end of the game, my opinion was completely different, and I actually would praise the use of the storm again. But in that moment, I was like, that feels really lazy, and it kind of lost me for a minute there. I was like, oh great, we're gonna have to do another decision thing here, and yada yada yada. But I did way too much assuming, and it ended up being a lot better than I thought it would be. One of the things I like about this game is it has a much darker and mysterious tone than the first one. The first one felt much more like a day in the life, supernatural high school drama. This felt like a murder mystery. There are certain scenes that show like the flipping back and forth of timelines, as well as when Detective Alderman interacts. Holy moly. I'm sorry if you can hear that, the wind is really picking up out there, but Detective Halderman, for example, he, you know, sees himself from the alternate timeline and gets sucked into it and I'm assuming dies. It was such a chilling scene, in my opinion. And there's plenty of scenes throughout this game where the pin kind of drops. It's suddenly so dark. And I love that because of how, you know, our character, Max, she has matured so she can handle these insane things. And honestly, I really liked that aspect of the story, how it could get a lot darker. The scene with Alderman, oh my god, that was genuinely, like, not stomach churning, but I was like, oh my god, what is happening? I also like how Moses has evolved till this point. He feels very realistic, and I like that Max isn't doing this all on her own, that she has Moses as an ally, someone who knows about her powers and things like that. Another great example of the choices really mattering in this game is with Vin, you have the option when you're trying to blackmail him to be like, well, I know you were sleeping with Safi, and I didn't choose that option. Well, later, Vin tells you, you know, he says, well, I probably should have said that, you know, kind of thing. And that was just another example. I do feel like the choices do really have impact here, and I like that about this game. It felt very conscious of what I was doing. This is also the episode with 2 of the romance options, and I will say, I love how realistically they handle Max. With Amanda, she sort of takes you on this, you know, fake date where you're going to the concert that you were going to go to, and, you know, I honestly, I had been like on again, off again flirting with Amanda as Max, and because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And when it came down to it, I love Amanda's character, by the way, because of how she spoke about getting too attached to people and how, look, I'm not going to make the first move because I don't know what you want. And it felt so real for someone in their 20s, because I feel like people in their 20s, like me, you're at the point when it comes to romance that you know what you want. You know, you're not going to go, when you're in high school, when you're 18, 19, you chase after people who, you know, you don't really want, or you do dumb things. Once you get up there in your 20s, you're thinking to yourself, I want someone, a partner, who I can truly count on. And so the way Amanda handled it, I thought was very well written. And then even better, when you turn her down, like I did, the way that Max handles it, and then the way Amanda responds is just so It was so well done. The way that Max says flat out, I can't bring you into this right now. And the way Amanda responds to it, that was a moment where I was like, this is well written. And then on top of that, with Vin, he's a bit more lighthearted. He's kind of implied to be more of a fling, hookup, kind of fun interaction. But you see him at the bar in a different timeline. And which, by the way, I think having each of their romances occur in different timelines actually works out perfectly, because by the end of it, you'll have some real consequences to deal with if you go with both. But I feel like he's a good character, he's a good friend to Max, and I think he handled, I think that scene wasn't as emotionally impactful, but I will say I do love the flirting. I did really enjoy that as a whole. And then this is also the episode where we see Doppelganger Max breaking into her house, and then on top of that we get revealed that it's Safi and that Safi has shape-shifting powers. And obviously called that all the way back. But in all seriousness, I think people are kind of overreacting with the hate on the fact that there are people with multiple powers in this game. Because it's a matter of time before people like Alex, people like Sean, Sean doesn't have powers, but Daniel, and Max. It's only a matter of time before these people interact. I mean, in the comics, I see a lot of people going, the comics are my canon. In the comics, Max meets another time traveler. It's not just a person with other powers. It's another time traveler exactly like her. So I don't think that that's too far-fetched. I did like the reveal, and also I want to praise Hannah's acting. Hannah Telle. Her acting as a whole in this game has taken steps ahead. And I think it's because she has also grown as a person, sort of with Max. And the way she played Safi pretending to be Max was really well done. And she just brought a whole different energy to it, where I could feel in the body language, it didn't feel like Max. And I thought that was so well done. I feel like in episode 4, all the plot threads come together very, very nicely. Especially with this whole Safi's banned book, what's going on with Lucas. Also, I love the fact that they reveal that there are times in the living world timeline where you're not talking to the character you think you are. You're actually talking to Safi disguised. And I thought that was very well done, because I kind of remember thinking to myself, when Vin is trying to get into his phone and he doesn't know his own password, I was thinking to myself, I was like, how does he not know his own password? Then we go over to the other timeline, and he says like, oh, I don't really know. It's about some painter thing. You flip over to the other timeline to interrogate Vin, and he knows exactly who the painter is. He knows all the information about him. He just doesn't tell you because he knows it's his phone password. And in the moment, I was kind of like, that feels weird. That's kind of a plot hole that, like, it's kind of arbitrary that in one timeline he remembers and the other he doesn't. And so that kind of reveal that the whole time it was Safi in some of these situations, I thought that really helped piece it all together for me. Especially with, even Gwen being framed for selling drugs on campus, things like that. So overall, I thought that was very well executed, and it felt like everything was coming together. Safi's motivations as to why she was shapeshifting and doing all these things, and why, all this mystery with the book deal and why it's so central to her murder and all of that. I thought it was very well done. And I really think this is the episode where Safi becomes a compelling character for me. Because for a while, I just didn't trust her and I didn't know why. She just kind of was off to me, and I don't exactly know how to put it. But I think I'll get more into this with the episode 5 and like the overarching thing. But I think this is really where it started to come together for me, and to see who she really is at her core. And I did write this. Now looking back, I disagree, but I wrote at the time that some of Safi's actions, with how extreme they are, it felt a little over the top. It felt a little movie villain-y. But then I also had to remember, this is the same franchise where Nathan Prescott, barges into the girls' bathroom, shoots a, blue-haired hippie, and then also at the same time there's a drug dealer whose best friend is a dog, and I have to remember, Life is Strange has always been wacky. It's always been corny. It's always been a little over the top with things. So that's kind of why now I'm kind of distancing myself from that note. And Also, I do like how they handle Lucas's ending, how kind of like publicly embarrassing him, as well as an opportunity for Safi's growth, encouraging her to go up there as herself instead of defaulting to her powers to, do the same old thing she's always done. Episode 5. I have seen a lot of hate about episode 5 in particular. People have called it a mess. People have called it incoherent. It causes plot holes. It's stupid. It's a waste of time. And this is where I really have to disagree. I thought episode 5 was actually one of the strong points of the game. I felt that this is where, for me at least, I put together who Safi was as a character. And I also think that the more existential pieces, which, like, the idea that Safi has been so many other people her whole life, shape-shifting and taking bits of them to do exactly what she wants. And the way that that manifests itself when it's overwhelming is that she then injects herself into others. I thought that was so well done. And also the idea of going into the storm, that the storm itself might not be a physical storm, but that this is just, once again, the culmination of two timelines crashing together at once. That's why I changed my mind on the storm. I thought the use of the storm, it being different, it's not just Safi's wrath. It's the colliding of timelines because these two very powerful people are occupying the same space. And I thought that was very interesting. But once again, that idea of Safi projecting herself into others is so fascinating. And the way you get them out of, like, double exposing the photos. I thought the first time I took the photo of, I believe it was Moses, and I saw Safi flash there for a second, I was almost like creeped out. This final episode has such a dark and overwhelming tone to it. I loved it. Because for a second there in the beginning, I thought it was going to be the thing where it's like, oh no, I'm going to have to choose between Safi and the storm or whatever. And I'm so glad that Max, at first I didn't like it, but I'm glad that Max kind of took it into her own hands and was like, no, I'm not doing this again. I've been through this, and takes the storm head on. And the actual hallucinations themselves, seeing the bathroom once again was disturbing, and I will say I did like seeing the mustache and sunglasses again because I always thought that was funny. But I did really like seeing that again, taking Max back to this tragic moment in her life, and then also the redoing of certain scenes from the first game. For example, Max being in the place of Nathan shooting Safi. I thought that was very compelling because, in a sense, Max feels that that's what she's doing. By choosing between a person or the sacred timeline or whatever you want to call it, she's no better than someone choosing to kill someone. And I thought that was a very well done scene. Also, seeing the chair that Max was strapped to once again and the sort of emotional impact that had on her, it was overwhelming with emotion. It was so overwhelming. And I thought that was, once again, another powerful idea that she sort of has this gauntlet to go through. And if you think about time as a being, it knows Max. And it's kind of like, what the hell are you doing here again? I thought we had this talk already. And putting her through the ringer, being like, don't you know why we don't mess with time anymore? I really liked how it felt very personal. And it also felt a lot better than the Life is Strange 1 episode 5, because that was just a lot of really weird puzzles and stuff, and I didn't like it as much. The sequence in the motel room is by far my favorite from this episode. How it sort of changes and alters as you keep going through. The saturation leaves the room slowly, and the objects in the room literally become flat and like stick to the wall. Also, the fact that the TV is playing static, but if you listen to it, it is an officer talking to a woman being like, this is your daughter, can you identify her? And she's like, but her hair's different. And it's clearly a reference to Chloe. And the fact that, even though it's kind of silly with the whole like, my daughter's hair is blonde, the fact that it is showing us a scene with Joyce of what she probably had to go through having to identify her daughter's body after this shooting was heart-wrenching. And that whole sequence really reminded me of PT, actually. The creepy audio, the altering of this thing. And the creepiest and most unsettling moment for me is when I was like, things are getting flat against the wall, nothing's really real anymore. And you hear Max talking about, if I just lay down for a second, if I just rest for a moment, I'm like, no, this just feels so wrong. And then you turn around and the door that you came from, that whole kitchen area is now, it's now a flat wall. It's now just a photo against the wall. I was so engaged in that sequence. It was so good. And then on top of that, I don't like how the only time we see any social medias or like texts from characters that Max knew from Arcadia Bay was during this nightmare sequence of Kate, Warren, and others texting. I feel like I understand why, because they're all being very appreciative and being very nice to her. And I feel like the purpose of that in the timeline where she sacrifices Chloe, for me, I feel like that is to show Max that, like, no, you made the right decision. You know, you shouldn't feel bad. And should add more conflict of, like, I want to save Safi, I want to save everyone, but I can't save them all. I thought that was a very interesting moment. I just wish they had some more, at least online interaction with these older characters. I love the ending of multiple timelines crashing together at once and sort of the combination of those memories. And the fact that Max sort of has a little group now who know about her and she's kind of out in the open now. I especially love that if you've tried to romance both Vin and Amanda, I'm willing to bet that they are going to have some words for you because they're now going to have these memories from both timelines. It also feels like a good way to have your actions from both timelines really matter, because going forward in a future game, which there's going to be a sequel, you know, these people are going to have so many conflicting memories of Max and what she did. I feel like it's the best, you know, that is a great way to kind of have your cake and eat it too. To, you know, end the game in a big climactic thing, and then also have your actions really matter. And then Safi sort of having her little villain monologue, and then the weird credit scene with Diamond did feel a little corny to me. It felt a little strange, but now that we're done with episode 5, I'm going to get into my overarching thoughts. I'm going to start with Safi. So with Safi, I've heard a lot of people joke about how, oh, we're going to have the Avengers and Life is Strange. I disagree. I don't think that's nearly as corny or bad as people make it out to be, because if you look at Safi as a character, she reminds me a lot of Nathan Prescott. You know, that sort of poor little rich kid mentality. You have everything and nothing. And the fact that she's literally saying the same lines as, like, you're trying to control me to her mom, to me, it makes me view her in that light of she is this rich kid who thinks she can do whatever she wants, and on top of that, she has the ability to be whoever she wants. That to me made this sort of villainous, like, the fact that she literally said, we are like gods, Max. I am not on the same level as all these other people, and neither are you. That might have come out of nowhere for some people, but I feel like the setup of her being so reckless and so manipulative, it kind of made sense for me, and I think she became a good antagonist towards the end of things, and I really have no issue with that. The idea that she wants to abuse her powers to try to get more in life makes complete sense to me. And I don't know how they're going to really handle that in the future. I don't think they're going to have some big, like, actual confrontation, but maybe the idea is that her and all these people using their powers at the same time is going to cause more trouble than it's really warranted, and Max is going to have to do something about it. I'm not really sure, but I feel like that's not nearly as bad as everyone thinks. But I will say the idea of her recruiting Diamond was kind of pretty funny. But no, overall, I feel like Safi's sort of fall into this more antagonistic role was very earned overall. I wish there was a little more foreshadowing with, like, her relationship with her mom, for example. That didn't feel as set up, but the fact that, you know, you hear very conflicting things about her. You learn that she has been manipulating you through just being manipulative, as well as this time travel stuff. And all of the vindictive things that she's done, she gets exactly what she wants, and she has a very twisted form of justice. And it reminds me of Nathan, minus some of the, like, the more grooming and, like, mental health aspects of Nathan's character. So I think she's a good antagonist overall, and I like how she was handled. I also really quick want to talk about the final choice. As of me playing it, most people said to Safi when she was like, "Will you accept me when I return?" She said yes, or most people said yes. I was in the minority of 10% saying no. And I really don't understand why. She goes on this rant about how it's like a Homelander type rant. She's like, we are so far above all these normal people. We're better than them. We have this ability. And then she also wants to use Max to sort of clean up all of her mistakes. And for Max as a character to go, yeah, sure, doesn't make sense to me. So of course I said no, and I feel like that's the right choice, that you're not going to help Safi because she's wrong. Max, even without you saying it, says multiple times, like, this is wrong. You're manipulating people and doing all these things. It's not right, no matter what kind of sense of justice you have. So I feel like it just makes sense to say no to her, you know, and kind of, I know it makes an enemy of her, but at the same time, it's like, I just feel like, I don't know. I don't really see why I was in such a minority for that. Maybe it'll balance out over the next few days. I can imagine it will, but we'll see. And then another thing, before I get into one final last big kind of rant, Max Caulfield, my beloved, I love her so much for many reasons. And I think this is a little more personal to me. But I played the first Life is Strange game when I was entering high school. And at the time, Double Exposure was also coming, or not Double Exposure, excuse me. Before the Storm was also coming out. And that's why Before the Storm is my favorite, because that's the first Life is Strange game that like I played, you know, as each episode came out, and I was so excited to see what happened next. But I played these games at a very influential time in my life. I was discovering myself in terms of my identity, sexuality, as well as who I wanted to be as a person. And being a young teenager at the time and seeing Max and Chloe and the way they navigated through their life, the story overall, I really bonded with those characters because of their struggles and things I could relate to being a teenager who had, you know, issues. And so it always meant a lot to me. And that's why I was kind of, you know, everybody was concerned about this game going into it. But the highest praise I can sing about this game is the real, genuine growth and connection that I still feel to Max. Because now Max is 28. I'm not 28. I'm in my earlier 20s. But still, the way she has grown and changed, the way she talks to people, the way she even flirts, the way that she... just the way that she is and the way that she's found herself in the world. To me, at least, as a young 20-something who's still, you know, finding his way through things, it was so reassuring that this character who I love grew in a very realistic and similar way that I can understand again. And I could really bond with her again. A lot of her lines, the troubles she faces, even the little internal monologues, I felt myself being like, saying to myself, that is so understandable. And I am just so happy that no matter what, some of the things I didn't like about the game, some of the corny dialogue, whatever, I can say wholeheartedly that Max as a character grew in a realistic manner, and I am so happy about it, and I can relate to her so much, and it means the world to me that this character, you know, it was handled the way she was in a very, very, just in a very good way. And just some of her lines, like I said, were very hit home for me as someone who grew up with those games as a teenager and is now a 20-something who is still growing as a person. And I just feel like it felt like meeting up with an old friend, you know, where you can just pick up right where you left off. And a lot of her struggles really hit home with me. And yeah, I know that's a much more personal opinion than really a more critical or artistic opinion about this game, but it's true, and it did affect the way I viewed this game. And yeah, sorry not to get all mushy on you guys, but no, Life is Strange is a sentimental game to me. It's why I started this channel, you know, uploading videos about the games. It's a game series I genuinely love and connect with, these characters. So, you know, just once again, Max's relatability was a huge part of it, and the way she was written, I thought it was handled very, very well. And so now, overall, I want to look at this game and some of the hate it's gotten. I have gotten into some spats online with people about this game and the hate that it has gotten. And this hate was exacerbated by the leaking of the plot of the game as well as the end screen of Max Caulfield Will Return. And I still stand strong in my opinion that this hate is unwarranted. Because a lot of the hate comes from, let's be honest, Price Field shippers who are upset that their favorite ship did not really follow through. I remember the very first reactions I saw, somebody posted on Twitter, which by the way, follow me on Twitter, it's in my description. The very first thing I saw on Twitter that was like a leak about the plot, which I didn't read, but I read the comments, or somebody replied to it. And the first thing, most liked reply, was, so Chloe doesn't show up at all? And that to me summed up a lot of the hate that this game is getting. Because it feels to me that people are just upset that this isn't the comics. It doesn't have Chloe, it doesn't have Victoria, it doesn't have Rachel, it doesn't have all these characters that we know and love. It's a new story and they're not happy about it. They're not happy that, it wasn't exactly what they dreamed up in their fan fiction, honestly. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for putting it like that, and I empathize with those people for being upset, but at the same time, hurling hate towards the developers is not the answer ever. And they said that they would respect both options, and I feel that they did, in the sense that the dialogue and the way that Max goes through things is different depending on the options. Her motivations slightly differ, as well as, the smaller details on her phone, which I know I criticized though, but, they didn't have to do that at all, but they did. So, once again, I feel like that kind of hate is unwarranted, and I feel like they are just hating on the whole game because it's not exactly, it doesn't feel, I'll even admit this, it doesn't feel like the first Life is Strange game, but it's not supposed to. Max has grown. It has been 10 years. God knows I'm different than I was when I was, 10 years ago. I don't even like 10 years ago me. I don't like high school me to begin with. I don't like me 2 years ago, let's be honest here. But for people to criticize the way that, Max acts so different, she talks so differently, Max would never say that. It's been 10 years. She's grown. And these characters have changed. And that relationship between Chloe and Max was never going to last. If you were begging your closest friend, or I guess for some people, your girlfriend, to save your mom, to not let, this town, don't trade you for thousands of other lives, and this person just said no to you, I don't think I could stay with that person. I don't know if you could. The other thing is the developer weighed in. I said this in a previous video, but the developer weighed in. He said, that's why they're not smiling in the photo in Life is Strange 2. Because things are strained. They're dealing with this trauma. So it just feels like half the fan base kind of missed the point of the first game, which is you're kind of supposed to sacrifice Chloe. She doesn't want to live. She understands it's her time. And the whole point of the game, getting to know these characters, their complexities, learning that Victoria is not as horrible as a person as you think, that Nathan isn't just an asshole, he's being manipulated and groomed. And all of these things, Kate's own struggles, things like that, it's meant to make you empathize with these people, that, they deserve a chance at life. And I feel like a lot of the people who hate on this game for the reason of Chloe's not in it, they had them break up, are missing the point. And I know that might be a controversial opinion. I know people are going to be upset in the comments. I've already gotten a few angry comments about my comments on this game. But it's my truth. It's what I believe. And I think I think it's right. It kind of reminds me, especially with the hate being exacerbated by this leaked script. This leaked, all the leaks, I guess. It reminds me of the hate that The Last of Us 2 got. Because people... the people who hated on The Last of Us Part 2, and I'm excluding the people who were just pissed off that there were gay people and that there was a trans person. I'm not talking about that kind of hate. The hate that game got was primarily because, spoiler alert for The Last of Us Part 2, that Joel died. And because people always said, the flashbacks with Joel and Ellie, that's the game we wanted. We wanted a game like that. Characters grow and change. Stories evolve. Stories must evolve. We can't just tell the same old thing. People would have been just as mad if this game sent Max back to Arcadia Bay and it was just a retread of the old one. People would be just as pissed. People are now equally as pissed as they would be because, oh, it's too different. It doesn't have exactly everything I wanted. And once again, I've come back to Last of Us Part 2. When the leaks came out, people, all they were concerned about was, oh, Joel dies? I hate this game now. They killed my favorite character. And it just became this vitriolic hate. And it's sad, because that game, I believe, is a masterpiece. I believe this game, I wouldn't call it a masterpiece, but it's a damn good game that I enjoyed and I feel I got my money's worth on. So, yeah. All that to say, I think the hate is unwarranted. I don't think the hate is fair. I think this is a good video game. And frankly, I'm excited to see where it goes. That's just my opinion, though. And everyone's entitled to their own opinion. No matter how much I might disagree with you. Sound off in the comments if you've made it this far in the video. And tell me what you think. Yeah, those are my first impressions on Life is Strange Double Exposure. I really enjoyed it. My tentative rating is an 8 out of 10. I'm going to do a more in-depth review of it once I get, I'm going to try and do another playthrough maybe and just kind of see what differences there are and talk to some other people about it. Really kind of sit on it, because this is only not even 24 hours removed from when I finished the game. So still very fresh in my mind. But yeah, I do love this game. I think it is a very strong entry in the series. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you who watch these videos. And I hope you have a good evening or morning or, whatever.